Good morning, everybody. My name is Oscar de los Santos, and I am the Assistant Leader of the Arizona House Democrats. Later today, Republicans in the Arizona House will engage in a desperate political stunt when they convene a sham committee to investigate Attorney General Chris Mays. Let's make one thing clear. My Republican colleagues should be ashamed of themselves, and they should be ashamed of this divisive, childish, and partisan exercise. The bottom line is this: Attorney General Mays is doing a hell of a job going after criminals, defending our rights, protecting consumers, and safeguarding our democracy. While Republican politicians endorse for president a sexual abuser charged with 91 felonies, Attorney General Mays is tackling our fentanyl crisis, going after the drug cartels, and putting dangerous criminals behind bars. While Republican politicians push for a complete and total abortion ban, Attorney General Mays is working around the clock to protect our reproductive freedoms. While Republican politicians ignore rural Arizona and do nothing to protect our precious water supply, Attorney General Mays is cracking down on foreign-owned corporations that are pumping Arizona dry. And while Republican politicians are asleep at the wheel while the cost of living rises, Attorney General Mays is taking bold action to sue corporate landlords for an illegal price-fixing conspiracy that is jacking up the cost of rent. I have said it before, and I will say it again. House Democrats will not be participating in this joke of a committee. We urge our Republican colleagues to put an end to their immature and useless political theater. As always, House Democrats are proud to be the adults in the room. We are excited and ready to roll up our sleeves, come together, negotiate, compromise, and find solutions to the issues that matter to everyday Arizonans. Now it is my honor to introduce the Attorney General of the state of Arizona, the duly elected Attorney General of the state of Arizona, Chris Mays.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me at the state's capitol this morning. Thank you, Representative de los Santos. We are so lucky to have you in the legislature. We need so many more leaders like him down here at the Capitol. I am Attorney General Chris Mays. I'm here this morning to address head-on the outlandish personal attacks on me and my office by the GOP Speaker of the House and the Senate President. Later this afternoon, the House Ad Hoc Committee on Executive Oversight will be meeting and hearing a presentation by none other than my sore loser former opponent, Andrew Gould. If that isn't an indication of our elected officials using their platform and offices for political stunts, I don't know what is. While our GOP friends were setting up their sham ad hoc committees, I, along with my fantastic team of lawyers and investigators, have been working hard to protect all Arizonans. These are just some of the highlights over the past few weeks at the AG's office. We sued RealPage and other corporate landlords over price-fixing apartment rents that have skyrocketed in recent years at a time when people are struggling just to get by and evictions are through the roof. I called on Congress to install scanners at our border to help tackle our deadly and dangerous fentanyl crisis that's killing our kids and ripping apart our communities. We won a lawsuit with one long-term care facility over their outlandish secrecy clause, and we have sued another one over serious allegations of elder abuse and neglect. I have been fighting to protect our reproductive rights and freedoms, calling on the Supreme Court with other attorneys general to protect medication abortions and to stop the insane state bans on emergency room abortions that have already jeopardized women's health and safety across our country. We have continued to investigate the sober living access fraud scandal, which will most likely end up being over $1 billion scammed when all is said and done. I have been traveling to rural counties that lack any groundwater protections to directly hear from residents whose wells have gone dry or will in the near future, thanks to mega farms and Wall Street hedge funds who knew they could take advantage of our state. And they knew they could take advantage of our state because this GOP-controlled legislature has failed to act on updating our decades-old groundwater laws for years, and instead chose to allow the Saudis and others to just stick a straw in the ground and drain us dry. And I fought to protect grocery customers from increased prices by opposing the proposed Kroger-Albertsons merger. So perhaps our Republican Senate President and Speaker of the House aren't very used to an Attorney General who will actually roll up her sleeves and fight for Arizonans. But that is what they have in me. Speaking of which, where were their investigative ad hoc committees on any number of these issues? Where was their concern? Where was the legislative oversight of my predecessor's office when he wasted more than 10,000 investigative hours on virtually non-existent voter fraud while a record number of Arizonans were being harmed, scammed, and abused? And where will our GOP Speaker and President be later this month? Will they be working on any of these important issues facing our state and people? Nope. They'll be at a private dinner eating $100 steaks and having a behind-the-scenes bourbon experience in Louisiana, Kentucky, raising money. That's right, a bourbon experience in Kentucky. That's what they'll be doing. This will be my first and last press conference on this issue. There's too much work to get done, and I intend to do the work. And I would encourage all elected officials in these buildings who are serious about acting as real public servants to join me. So with that, I'd be glad to take questions.
Let's start off with the elephant in the room. The people who are pumping groundwater, whether you like the policy or not, are acting within the scope of the law. We can debate until the cows come home, whether in fact the legislature should have updated the laws. Laws that go back to, let's see, Democratic Governor Bruce Babbitt, but we'll leave that aside. How the hell do you say people who are obeying the law, who are following what the law says in terms of their ability to pump, now you're saying, well, maybe there's a public nuisance. Based on what?
Well, we haven't filed that lawsuit yet, Howard, but, I think it's fair to say that my office is very seriously investigating the very real possibility that these huge mega farms, including the Saudi farm owned by Fondamonte and the Riverview Dairy in Cochise County, do violate our nuisance laws. Based on what? Well,
Yes.
we're developing the evidence. I have sent dozens of investigators and special agents to Cochise County and La Paz County to interview residents about the harms that they are seeing on the ground, including the dewatering of their wells, including cracking in the foundations of their homes, including the development of fissures in the ground, which are threatening homes. And I have hired a hydrogeologist to provide expert testimony in a potential lawsuit.
You're missing the permission to treat the witness as hostile. You're talking about evidence. There is no question that wells are being dewatered. I want to understand under what legal theory people who obey the law.
Well, they're not obeying the law. The nuisance law is a law as well. And as you know, we were successful in using the nuisance law in Chino Valley when a company wanted to put a mine over top a group of homeowners' homes. And then we filed a nuisance lawsuit, and that individual gave up on that attempt in Chino Valley to blow up aggregate rock above people's homes. So, look,
But
you know,
you didn't win that lawsuit.
well, we didn't.
But you didn't win that lawsuit.
Well, actually, in a sense, we did, because the mine, the attempted mine went away. I mean, Howard, look, we'll see in a court of law whether or not I'm right. But I can tell you this, having done town halls in La Paz County now and in Cochise County, that the people of these counties are desperate for help. They are desperate for help. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have been ignored by these Republicans for decades, and they are hungry for somebody to help them. And I can tell you this, I promise you this, that these people who have told me the stories about how their homes are being devalued, their wells have dried up, would be appalled to learn that this legislature issued me a public records request and a letter slamming me for doing that nuisance investigation. They are desperate for someone to stand up for them, and I am going to stand up for rural Arizonans. These Republicans aren't interested in doing that, and that is obvious. Okay, Jeremy.
What's the status of the fake electors investigation, and do you expect to see indictments soon, and if so, when?
So, as you know, as I've said all along, we are engaged in a very serious, very professional investigation into what happened with the fake electors. I am not ready to stand before you here today and announce anything, but we will have something for you on that front very soon.
Well, can you give us shed some light on the average layperson might be thinking, if the evidence is apparent, why aren't you acting on it? Can you give us some perspective, of course, without divulging anything sensitive? What are the intricacies involved in this?
Well, look,
things that we may not understand?
Yeah, I can't. I wish I could, Barbara. I wish I could go into that. But this is something. Well, two things I would say about that. Number one, we got a late start here in Arizona because my predecessor, for whatever reason, decided not to investigate this case. So we were essentially 2 years behind. We are coming up about on the 1 year mark of the beginning of our investigation that I undertook when I became the Attorney General. This is the kind of matter, one involving the very premise of our democracy, one involving an alleged attempt to undermine our very democracy, that deserved a fulsome and complete and professional investigation.
With regard to this committee here, do you suspect that what may have triggered this is the ESA indictments that you announced last month?
I don't know. It's hard for me to tell what precipitated this. Look, unfortunately, this seems to be a Republican majority that isn't very serious about issues. I can't imagine why they would want to spend their time investigating an attorney general who is, fully engaged in her job, so I don't know. It could be any number of things. It kind of makes me sad as a former Republican that this is what this party has come to. As I said, we're just going to go on and continue to do our jobs, and that'll be that.
One of the terms they said is improper that they want to investigate is you telling people at one of the town halls that you want to put this on the ballot and then saying that you don't have the authority to try and get anything on the ballot. What's your response to that? Is there a legal question?
No, I look, what I said was, and I was speaking in my private capacity, what I said was if this legislature fails to pass groundwater laws and an update to the 1980 Groundwater Act that protect Arizonans, that I would personally be involved in a ballot initiative to put it to the people of Arizona. And I will, and I stand behind that statement. I will use my personal time to get behind a ballot initiative to fix this situation. And I think it will pass. It will pass overwhelmingly.
But if you've sent out AG investigators and hired a hydrologist expert something, then isn't that taxpayer resources?
No, that's for a potential nuisance lawsuit. I'm hoping that we don't get to the point where we have to do a ballot initiative. I'm hoping we don't get to that point. Either I'm successful in the work that I'm doing at the Attorney General's office under nuisance law, or these people get their act together and protect our groundwater supplies against unreasonable pumping by the Saudis and a Minnesota dairy and a whole bunch of other folks, or we're going to have to take it to the people.
Well, okay, but if you take it to the people, there are rights, and you know this, there are grandfathered rights, both for surface water and groundwater in terms of prior appropriation, all the rest of that stuff. So even assuming you get something on the ballot, how does any of that help deal with the people who already have the rights, who already are pumping, who will say, we were here first? You can't do ex post facto.
Well, look, we'll have to deal with that down the road. And certainly, Howie, there's some of that at play when we're creating AMAs as well. And I'm not going to stand here before you and write a ballot initiative in real time.
Come on.
but happy to have you join me in doing that. But look, yeah, I mean, again, I can't underscore enough how dire the situation is in rural Arizona. I mean, the ground is opening up beneath the people of Cochise County. People are watching their livelihoods be destroyed because this place can't get its act together, because this place is dysfunctional, because this place, and basically one or two legislators are standing up in the way of sane reforms. So, I'm just doing everything that I can as the Attorney General to restore some sanity to our groundwater policy. But I will tell you that, protecting our groundwater from Saudi Arabia is probably the most bipartisan issue I have addressed as Attorney General. I mean, pretty much overwhelmingly everybody agrees with the concept that no one should be able to harm their neighbors just because they have an unlimited supply of money to pump groundwater.
So
Bram? Okay, go ahead. And then Bram.
Indicated to you any other reason that they're investigating you right now outside of the water? I know they have a long list of complaints. Most recently, it was your consumer report about crisis pregnancy centers. They seemed to indicate in that press conference that they wanted to. Have they said anything to you on that?
No, not really. I mean, and I think this is the sad state of affairs that we're in. If they wanted a different attorney general, they should have won the election. I mean, I won, so tough luck. Try again. Come back in 3 years and try to beat me, but don't start some sham investigative committee here in the legislature and waste taxpayer dollars. And if they think for 1 minute they're going to stop me with this silly little activity behind us, they can think again. Nobody's going to stop me from protecting the people of Arizona. Bram?
Is the unspoken motive for this investigation your fake electors investigation, going after a number of Republicans? Is it designed to distract and diminish what you're doing?
I don't want to speak specific specifically to the fake electors investigation, but I think it's fair to say that the underlying motive is to distract from everything that we're doing at the AG's office. I mean, they obviously don't like, for the most part, the fact that I'm trying to protect Arizonans, the fact that I'm trying to protect American democracy, the fact that I am standing up for reproductive rights. They don't like any of these things. But I am old enough to remember a day when we had policy disagreements between Republicans and Democrats, and we didn't stand up sham investigative committees to deal with them. We dealt with them on the floors of the House and the Senate. We dealt with them in the governor's office and the AG's office. We worked through our differences, but we didn't waste time with stuff like this.
I'm going to do one more question from somebody who
Stacey.
has not asked a question yet.
Yes, Stacey, you can have it.
Anticipating one of the things that the committee is going to be looking at, as they have signaled in press statements so far, what they would call sort of a selective enforcement of laws. Specifically, the lawsuit filed by the transgender athletes over the law that was enacted in 2022. Can you address that element of their concern? And specifically on that lawsuit, all we've heard from your office is that you are disqualified. Can you say more about why?
Yeah, so look, we are not pursuing that litigation because we think there's serious constitutional concerns with it. I also, as you know, think that there are serious constitutional concerns with an 1864 territorial era abortion ban. Frankly, I also think there's serious concerns with the 15-week abortion ban. So, you know, that is why we're not pursuing it. I know that Speaker Toma and Senate President Peterson are. And then I would say, lastly, there are resource issues with regard to some of this. You know, we still have adultery laws on the books that aren't prosecuted. And so, you know, given the amount of time that I need to spend on real issues, the real issues impacting Arizonans, including going after price-fixing landlords, protecting our water supplies, fighting the fentanyl crisis, those are not things that I prioritize at the AG's office in terms of, you know.
I believe this is all a precursor to perhaps an impeachment vote on you.
You know, I don't know. Again, I have no idea what they're trying to do. That if it is, it won't succeed, and it certainly isn't going to stop me from doing my job. So.
Thanks for everyone coming.